Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, How to Make Oracle EPM Cloud Even More Powerful, presented by Tim Faitsch, our Technical Solutions Director at Applied OLAP. We are going to have time for questions at the end, so please put your questions in the question pane, and we will address them at the conclusion. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website shortly, and we're actually going to be just conducting a few polls throughout this presentation, and we would greatly appreciate your participation. And as of now, I will turn it over to Tim Faitsch.
Thanks, Julie. Welcome everyone to our webinar today, how to make EPM Cloud even more powerful with Dodeca. So I've got a few slides to go through, and the bulk of the time today will be in a demonstration mode. So I want to talk today about the spreadsheet dilemma that we see out in the corporate world. So we've got users in finance and other areas within our organizations, and they absolutely love spreadsheets. They live and breathe spreadsheets, and they get a lot done with the spreadsheets. But then we've got other actors here, which are IT, internal audit, and they don't love spreadsheets because the spreadsheets are difficult to control, and spreadsheets are sometimes error prone and introduce risk into situations. And so we've got the Dodeca product here in the middle, and the idea here is that Dodeca is going to bridge that gap between the users who love their spreadsheets, live and breathe in spreadsheets, and IT and internal audit who want to control those spreadsheets but have no real way of doing that. And so that's where Dodeca comes in. It gives the spreadsheets to the users that they want and love, and it gives IT and internal audit the control that they need to reduce risk in their organization. Now, we've got Dodeca here, and we want to talk about the sources that we can bring into Dodeca. So we've got relational databases, and Dodeca is fluent in talking to relational databases. And so we can bring in also Essbase data as well. And we can bring in, Julie tells me that I've got a problem with my camera and lip sync. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn off the camera, and you guys can focus on the slides today. Okay, so we've got Essbase, we've got relational, and we've got REST sources as well. And we can bring those all into Dodeca and create views and reports in our spreadsheets. But we also recently, within the last few years, have been working on our Oracle EPM Cloud connector. And we've got this whole alphabet soup from Oracle, and they've got these really great products, planning and budget cloud services, financial consolidation and close cloud, enterprise profitability and cost management, as well as enterprise data management. And now we can bring all of those things into our Dodeca spreadsheets and our Dodeca views and marry them with those existing data sources that we have, whether they be relational, Essbase on-prem or in the cloud, or REST sources. So I want to get into a demo to show all this stuff today, but I want to ask a few questions first of the audience. So let's do a couple of polls here. So the first one, how do users work with Oracle EPM Cloud today? And we've got some folks answering our questions now. So we've got Oracle Web Forms only, Excel with manual uploads, and then a mix of Oracle Forms and spreadsheets, Control Excel right back, and not currently live with EPM Cloud yet. All right, that's one poll. We're going to do a second one now. Where do your final management reports live? Excel, PowerPoint, some reporting tool or dashboard, or some combination of the above. All right. Thank you for your participation in this. Looks like the winner there was the combination. All right, so let's get back into our demo here. So I want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing here in Dodeca if you've never seen Dodeca before. So I'm actually looking at an administrator view. So this ribbon isn't necessarily what the end user would see. Now keep in mind that all of the toolbars and ribbons that you see today are completely and totally configurable. So we can show or not show to the users anything that we want. It's completely controllable by you. And on the left side, we have our view selector or view hierarchy, and we can customize that as well. We can have that to be look different for different groups, and so we can customize that as we see fit. Now, when I scroll over or hover over some of these, I can see thumbnails of those views. So we have that capability built into our system where the user doesn't necessarily have to open up to be reminded of what that report does. It just kind of gives them a visual cue to remember, hey, this is what that report does. That's what that report looks like before they actually go in there. So it's kind of a nice little feature that we have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on one of these views. And it makes it very easy for a user who's not maybe familiar with Excel or some other kind of reporting tools to just be able to very quickly find what they need and get what they need. So this is a products by entity report. And the data here is coming in live from EPM Cloud from our PBCS cube. We don't store any of this data directly in Dodeca. Now, what you're looking at here is actually an Excel file. We use the native Excel file format. So functions, formatting, all of those things are really easy to control. You're not off in some proprietary tool making changes that you're not familiar with. If you're familiar with doing things in Excel, it's very easy to do them in Dodeca and have that control. Now, on the top, we have our selectors. And the selectors here drive the content on the report. So when I click on one of these selectors, it actually brings up a live hierarchy that is coming from our planning cube in EPM Cloud. And this is brought back in real time, and the user can navigate the hierarchy. And we can customize these as we need as a Dodeca administrator. Now, on the top here, above the selectors, we also have a number of icons. So we can take this file out to Excel, and it's going to look exactly like it does in here. We can even take that capability away from the end user if it's sensitive information. We can allow them to take this out to PDF. We can allow them to print it. We can allow it to go out to PowerPoint, just as it looks here. So you could update your numbers and send it off to a PowerPoint slide with a single click. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on this, the entity selector. And the entity selector looks a little different than the account selector did in that it has these checkboxes. And what these checkboxes allow us to do is run what we call a cascade report. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the auto on button, which means that any selections that I make will automatically generate a new report. But I'm going to select the sales entity, and then I'm going to press this Select Children button. And what that's going to do is it's going to run what we call a cascade report. For each of the selected entities, it's going to take that template and it's going to rebuild that template with each of those selections and add a new tab, as you can see down below. And so it happens very quickly. And the reason for that is our SJET technology. So the SJET technology is something we introduced in a few years back in our software that would allow us to run queries in parallel. Now, this is something that you can't really do in SmartView, where you're running simultaneous queries against your database in real time. So it's going to fire off all those queries at once, and then as they come back, it's going to compile them, and once they're all done, it's going to present the view to the end user. Now, one other thing I want to mention is that this is a template-driven approach. So this template is stored on our server, on the Dodeca server, and when the user requests it, they're guaranteed the latest version of that template. It's not stored somewhere off on a shared drive. Somebody changed it. This is all auditable, trackable. Who changed that template last? You can go through and version those templates as well. And we have a patented process that guarantees the user will get the absolute latest version of that template. So it allows us to guarantee that from an auditability standpoint. Okay, now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change our account selection here. I'm going to drill in a little bit here into our account hierarchy. And I'm going to look for this hardware account. Now, maybe this is the most detail that we store in our cube, but certainly within our organization, there's usually layers below the where we're storing in a cube, like a planning cube in Essbase or in EPM Cloud. And so what I can do here is I can create right-click menus. And I've created a couple here. One allows me to open transactions. So it's going to take this whole point of view, and when I click on it, it's going to pass it off to another view. And this view is bringing in data from a SQL Server relational database. And this has my transactions. Now, there's over 2,400 rows of this, so I don't necessarily want to see all of them at once. So I've employed our grouping feature in Dodeca. So this allows us to group, and in this case, we're grouping on customer name, and get subtotals for each of those customers. Now, if I expand this here, I can actually see the individual transactions here. And you'll notice that in the customer column, I actually have a hyperlink. So Dodeca allows us to add in hyperlinks. Now, when I click on that hyperlink, it's going to open up yet another view. So it's going to take an invoice ID and pass it off to another view, and it's going to look up that image for that invoice in our system. And so you can create these really cool drill paths going from your PVCS, FCCS, EPCM database through to transaction level data, and then even to images, all without leaving one system. I was just talking with a former colleague the other day, and she said, if I want that, I have to call up somebody to get that invoice. So imagine how painful that would be compared to the experience that I just showed. So now that we've gone through this, let me close these views. Let me go into the next view, the product planning view. So this is a relatively simple planning view that I've got set, but it's actually not allowing me to run it yet. So I talked a little bit about these selectors. These selectors are fully customizable, so I can kind of pare back what a user sees and doesn't see. And I can make them either hierarchies or drop-downs. I can also force a user to make a selection each time they come in. So sometimes we want people to kind of pump the brakes a little and say, hey, what am I actually doing here? Let me make sure I'm making the right selection here. So we clear the selection out each time and force them to make a selection. Now, once I make that plan selection, my build button is enabled, and now I can build my view. Now, this is a relatively simple planning input form, and I can make changes in here as I need, send data back to my PVCS cube, and if I want, I can have a calculation run. In this case, a calculation is run that's going to be a very specific calculation, because we can send the intersection data of the data that changed on this form back to the PVCS server. And so it's a very simple or small defined calc that runs. So we have this capability in here. Now let's get into a little bit more complex case here, where we're actually sending back to multiple cubes. And so this is something that would be difficult to set up in a tool like SmartView or a web form. So let me just kind of break down what's happening here. We've got a whole bunch of selectors here because we're allowing the user to pick a base scenario and a target scenario. So at the top here, we have data coming in from our BSO plan type. And so BSO, ASO, those are, if you're not technical with EPM Cloud, those are just two different types of storing data. And usually it's difficult to bring those back onto the same sheet. And so in Dodeca, it's very simple. We just set up different retrieve ranges for the different, the cubes that we're connecting to, no matter where they are. They can be in different modules, different servers, it doesn't matter to us. So we're bringing back BSO data, which is a little bit more summary than the ASO data. The ASO, we have it down to customer level. But I want to be able to have my budget data here for 2026 plan, and I want to be able to take my 2025 actuals sales data and spread the current year plan based upon those actuals, so that I have a 2026 plan at a customer level. And so the way that I've set this up here is I can make that change here in BSO. I've brought back that ASO actuals data it's hidden over here behind the scenes. If I need to, I can see it and expand that, but I've got it collapsed for now. And it's going to take that and it's going to run that allocation for me. And then once I'm done, I can click this send button, and that's going to write that data back to the BSO cube and the ASO cube simultaneously. And so we can get really sophisticated with how we set these views up, because we don't have any limitations. We could bring in relational data here. We could bring in on-prem or cloud Essbase data as well. We don't have any limitations on what sources we have on our sheet. Okay, so let's switch gears here just a little bit. And I'm going to open up the operating expense variance view. And so I want to talk a little bit about commentary. Commentary is really a major feature in Dodeca. And we have a lot of flexibility around commentary. So on the right, you'll notice that we have this view comments. And so we can set up comments that are strictly for this view. And I've set this up as a Slack style or conversation style comments. And so we can come over here and have kind of a conversation with all the people that are using this view, provided they have the correct access. So you have that capability in here. And so when you're working through close and you have a view that's really important for maybe updating numbers, this could be a really useful feature for you. Now we also have worksheet comments. And so I've set this up so that we have different comments by each account. And you can come in here and change those, and you can see who made the comment, when they made the comment. You can even add responses to the comments and things like that. So commentary is a major feature. We also allow for adding file attachments. So if there's some addendum or some notes that you need to add in a file, maybe attach a spreadsheet even, and everyone who has access to those comments has access to that file then. Now let's look at this. We'll look at comments on the next view a little bit as well, but I want to talk first about how this view is set up exactly. And I want to talk about it in terms of our entity dimension. So before I talked about a cascade report, and this is kind of like a cascade report. I call it an inline cascade. So what this is doing is I've selected this sales entity, and I've got a template here of 4 columns: actual, budget, variance, and variance percent. And that's going to get replicated on the sheet at runtime based upon what our entity dimension looks like. So it's going to bring back that sales member, that sales entity, but it's also going to bring back the children of that sales entity all on the same sheet. So if I look at some kind of variance, I can very quickly look to the right to see and explain where that number changed. And it's fine to have a report like this, so you could set this up in SmartView, but so let's suppose that the sales organization got split in 2, and now you've got a sales east and a sales west, and you've got 4 different entities under each of them. What an analyst would have to go out and change that report and make 2 reports. And so every time something would change, they'd have to make another report. And imagine for a very complex organization, that might be a lot of reports, maybe even hundreds. In this case, it's all dynamic. So when that sales member is queried from that sales entity is queried from the database at runtime, it actually builds this template. And so if one of these sales area entities was closed, it would automatically get removed from the report to reflect what the hierarchy was. And vice versa, if they added a new entity under here, it would automatically get added. So it's a really cool feature. And imagine you can climb up the hierarchy and be able to and go down the hierarchy and be able to do the exact same thing. And this will be replicated the same way each time. Now, what I want to show here is I've got these little Excel kind of triangles in the upper right corner of some of the cells. So when I scroll over these cells, I actually can see commentary. So this is commentary, the same commentary that we were seeing on the previous sheet. I can actually show it in a slightly different way. So as someone's looking at all of these numbers at once, if they need some more information about it, they can get it here very quickly. Scroll over, and now they can read in real time some comment about that variance. Now I added a second sheet to this view, and what this does is it's got that same hierarchy set up. So it's whatever entity we've selected and its children. It's going to bring back the numbers, and then it's just going to bring back that kind of summary comment from the last or that total operating expense account. And what this allows to do is, let's say you had a manager of each of these entities enter in a comment, And then once that happens, now their manager can come in, read through all those comments, enter a summary comment, and then so forth up the line to the top of the organization. And you'd have all of that commentary in kind of at your fingertips and be able to quickly scroll through as you made a different selection within the entity dimension. Now, the final view that I want to talk about here is one that this was a use case that came from a customer of ours. They said, you know, we've got a list of products and we've got a lot of attributes on those products, and we don't want to store all those attributes in our Essbase cube. We just want to be able to query products based upon some kind of attribute that they might have. And we've got all those mappings in a relational table. So what we're doing here is we're bringing back this list of products based upon these two selectors here, this customizations and categories selectors. And these are just lists that we're pulling from a relational table, from a SQL table. And when you make your selection of them, it goes out to that table and it says which products have this attribute, and then it builds that list and creates the report. And we actually have multiple attributes here. So we can, let me turn on the auto build. We can in real time see that list get generated. I think there's a lot that are in the in that standard. But it's actually writing a query as I make those selection of attributes, going out, querying that relational table, putting this list together, and then dynamically bringing back all of that data from the EPM Cloud Cube, the PBCS Cube. So I thought that was a really cool way of solving kind of that problem using both EPM Cloud and relational all within that same view. So that's what I wanted to demonstrate today. Let me let's go back, and I think we've got a couple more polls, Julie, if I'm not mistaken. So we've got a poll: how automated is your reporting process today? Manual only, some automation, mostly automated, and then fully automated. I want to talk to the people who vote fully automated. All right, poll is ended. Looks like tie between some automation and mostly automated. All right, in our last poll today, what's your top EPM challenge? Replacing fragile spreadsheets, secure Excel write-back, migrating Essbase templates, supporting power users with governance, or no major challenges? All right, so it looks like supporting power users with governance. Okay, cool. All right, so just to recap here, Dodeca makes EPM Cloud more powerful by standardizing those templates that users are using. You don't have a bunch of one-off things floating around your organization. everything is auditable. So when the users enter data, fully tracked and auditable, we can go look, see who changed what number, when, what was it before, what was it after. We can check on who's entering commentary, who's made changes to those templates and when. The other thing is we can customize everything. So there's really no, we can't do this, we can't bring these two sources of data together. We usually can bring all the sources of data together. The other major aspect is the no training. I don't have to train people on how to use Smart View. I can really make the views intuitively obvious for users so that it's really fast for them to get started. I can make those selectors very specific about what's available to an end user as well. And really, there's no limits. So we can bring in all of those different sources together onto a single spreadsheet, and we can do it in a very fast manner. So I want to talk a little bit about the Dodeca challenge. I love to do proofs of concept. So if you've got a use case that you think might be cool with EPM Cloud and Dodeca, I'm your guy. Send us an email, dodeca@appliedolap.com. We'd love to talk to you, and no obligation. So we're happy to do these for free and essentially challenge us with your hardest use case. And then I wanted to take a second to plug ODTUG's Kscope 26. So the greatest conference in the history of conferences. I'm sure it's going to be awesome. You can save $100 with our VAPP26 code when you register. So make sure that you're there in June in Denver. We're looking forward to seeing everyone. And with that, I will take any questions that you have, Julie.
Great. So just to point out that in the chat, I did put the link to the Kscope registration as well as our code. So for those that want the ease of doing that, some questions that we have in the queue. Let's see here. Let's see. How well does this approach scale when you need to produce hundreds or thousands of reports?
Yeah, so the great thing about Dodeca is that template approach where I talked about that one use case where we're pulling an entity and we get the children entity. If you had, let's say, even 10 or 15 reports where you were doing that for your entire organization, that shrinks down to a single view, but it becomes dynamic. And now you only have to maintain one template, which is really cool. So we see that happening at a lot of our customers where they take 100 reports and they go down to maybe 4 or 5 reports. And so I think it scales really well.
And another one, how does this fit alongside cloud EPM platforms and modern dashboards?
Yeah, so the EPM Cloud is fantastic, but if you're kind of struggling maybe with Smart View adoption or Smart View training, that's where this would kind of fit in. If you really want that custom kind of Essbase interface where a dashboard might not lend itself to handling that, multi-dimensional data, I think Dodeca would really kind of fit that gap.
Okay, and we already have a lot of complex Excel reports. Do we need to rebuild them all?
So Dodeca will actually, because we use the Excel file format, we can actually import those templates. So we could take a Smart View template, import it in Dodeca, and then add in our what we call tokens to drive to use those selectors. And so a lot of what you already have, we can leverage, which is kind of nice.
Okay, that seems to be it for the questions that we have.
Okay, cool.
So thank you for putting this together, Tim. We really appreciate it. And you are available for questions at dodeca@appliedolap.com. Thank you, everybody, for participating and taking time out of your day to join us. And we look forward to seeing you at Kscope 26 or on the next webinar. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.